Salam sejahtera, anda bersama saya Rizal Zulkarfi dan saya ditemani dengan rakan setugas saya
Zaizlan.
Dan kami akan membincangkan berkenaan dengan harapan menjelang pengumuman dan juga pembentangan bajet 2016 yang akan dibentangkan oleh Perdana Menteri pada pukul 3 petang nanti. Dan sebelum kita membincangkan berkenaan dengan harapan bajet 2016 bersama tamu di studio, saya ingin bertanya kepada Iza. Apakah harapan Iza untuk bajet 2016?
Bila Rizal, untuk bajet 2016, saya harapkan ia lebih menjurus kepada membantu golongan muda, terutama sekali mereka yang baru saja mula bekerja, Rizal. Okey,
terima kasih Iza Izlan dan kita teruskan dengan perbincangan bajet 2016.
I think what needs to be done is to focus more on the oil and gas construction, which is what Rapid is putting a full stream on that, and also what development has been slowed down a little bit in East Malaysia, which is I think the Samur project and the Pitang, the Sogip. I think that should start picking up. I think more emphasis should be put on there. I think the best time to push forward construction in the oil and gas is during this time when oil prices are down, and I think things should be focused on that. Even with the oil prices down, the byproduct of oil and gas is still having good revenue. I think if we focus more on that side, I think things will be good.
Okay, for the 2016 budget, there are a few things that I think that I have emphasized very clearly to the Prime Minister when I briefed him. I think the unification of the services industry of Malaysia is very vital. We have many clever people in the services sector, both from the private sector and also the government sector, but they are doing things on their own without coming together in one single platform. So unification was one of my points. The other point I raised very strongly was empowerment of the associations and the private sector to do what they have to do for the government.
Number two is in the area of funding. This is an area that we hope government also can do something, because this is a policy matter where it's becoming very difficult for our GBS type of companies to borrow. The third area is on export. Remember, so I talked about the ability to do business outside Malaysia. Now that is an area hopefully we can do more, where we are able to access to all the different market within the region.
Apabila dikemukakan bajet bagi tahun 2016, memohonlah kepada pihak kerajaan agar memberi peluang kepada penggiat-penggiat seni di Sabah agar mendapat peluang pekerjaan, mendapat bajet-bajet yang kami perlukan dalam bidang apa sajalah yang penting berkaitan dengan seni. Jadi saya harap kerajaan dapat memberi tanggung jawab ataupun memberi kasihan lah sama kami yang di Sabah ini, karena kasihan juga kami ini karena banyak juga kami punya kebolehan di sini nih. Cuma kemudahan yang kami perlukan itu tidak ada. Maksudnya kami tiada aset.
Kita sekarang ini sudah menunggu dan saya dipahamkan bajet yang akan dibentangkan adalah memang bajet berkonsepkan rakyat lah. Dan berlaku peningkatan dari beberapa aspek, terutama dari segi bantuan-bantuan kepada rakyat. Jadi kita tunggu dan lihatlah, kerana saya dimaklumkan ada perkabaran gembira untuk rakyat akan dimaklumkan dalam pembentangan bajet nanti.
Hai, dan seterusnya saya akan memberikan pengenalan berkenaan dengan tetamu kita di studio dan juga apakah yang kami akan bincangkan dalam perbincangan menjelang bajet 2016 yang akan diumumkan oleh Perdana Menteri pada pukul 3 petang nanti. Bersama saya di studio adalah Profesor Datuk Dr. John Antony Xavier, Profesor Pengurusan ataupun Pensyarah Pengurusan Sekolah Perniagaan Swasta Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. Selamat datang ke studio, Prof. Dan seterusnya adalah Bruce Hamilton, pengarah GST Deloitte Malaysia. Hi Bruce, thank you for joining us. Saya akan teruskan perbincangan ini dalam bahasa Inggeris. Let's look at the general economy right now. I think we want to look at the state of the economy right now and what bajet 2016, or how budget 2016 will address issues or challenges in the state of the economy right now. We look at external factors. There's a lot of uncertainties in the external economic situation right now. You have the pending rate increase by the Fed, and you have also the slowing growth in China. How will budget, or how should the government look at budget 2016 in relation to the state of the economy, especially the external factor right now?
You're right. The world economy is in a very challenging circumstance. Globally, there has not been much recovery since the 2008 financial crisis. The recovery in America is tepid. The recovery in the Eurozone is virtually zero. Our other major trading partners like China, China is in permanent decline for the first time since 2008. China has declined below 7%. It's now targeted to grow this year at 6.5, 6.6. Japan also is in a state of deflation. It's also in decline. So our regional trading partners as well as our international trading partners are not in a state to provide our exports the lift that we would require. More so with oil prices down to below $50 per barrel. Our commodity prices like palm oil also are down. So we are looking towards reduced revenues. And because of the weak demand overseas, our currency will also likewise depreciate because there's not much export takeoff. In fact, our exports have declined this year. So yes, we are looking towards a situation where the government will be constrained in terms of its revenue position. Although fundamentally we are strong, but external, we are an open economy, very dependent on trade, and therefore that is the falling prices of oil and commodities. In fact, 1/3 of our exports comprise oil, petroleum products, and palm oil. So that is going to impact on our continued currency depreciation. Although currency depreciation is good in terms of export competitiveness, but because of the slowdown of the global economy, we don't have that much of an offtake in terms of exports. So I envisage that the government will be pressed in terms of its revenue position. So it's going to be a very challenging budget because the government will have to have one eye on its fiscal discipline because credit agencies, international investors are looking to Malaysia. They are watching whether we are serious in our fiscal discipline. Are we going to renege on our targeted fiscal sustainability, whereby we hope to achieve a zero balanced budget come 2020. At the same time, the government is committed to improving the economy. Although we are expected to grow within 4 to 5%, the government has to come in to ensure that the growth is on a upward trajectory. So the government will have to have a pro-growth agenda. And this being the first year of the implementation of the 11th Malaysia Plan, it is likely that the government will have an enlarged development budget. So on the one hand, it has to ensure fiscal discipline. On the other hand, it has to ensure that development and growth proceeds on track. So it is these two conflicting objectives that the government will have to balance.
It's a very tough balancing act that the government has to look at moving forward, right, Bruce? Especially what you mentioned just now, Doctor, which is the revenue from the oil and petroleum because of the lower oil prices will be smaller this year. How will GST maybe help that as we look at government revenue moving forward?
I think what you'll find is that with the GST having really got onto its feet now and starting to move forward, apart from the few issues that need to be dealt with, it will lend itself to business being a little bit more efficient. It'll also lend itself to ensuring that probably more people are on the tax net in order to generate tax revenue for the government. I think what it probably will end up doing is allowing business to derive those efficiencies. If one thinks back to the sales tax and services tax that preceded GST, they were really a drain on the economy because they ended up dragging funds out of the economy and increasing the base on which any business made its profit. So it sort of really made the economy a bit less efficient. And hopefully with the GST now, having got over that introductory period, which is always going to be a bit hard, the path will smoothen out a bit at this stage.
But will it actually help Budget 2016, the formation of Budget 2016? Do you see that contribute quite a huge portion?
I think you've got to remember there are two sides to the coin. One is, yes, it will increase revenue generation. There's no question about that. It then comes back to a case of, well, what does the government spend that money on? If they're simply moving it across to support less fortunate people, low income groups, then you're possibly losing a bit of the benefit of the GST. As the professor said, it's always a fine balancing act as to what you do with the revenue generate and what you spend it on. So it's going to be a real difficult challenge for them to achieve.
Yeah, it's very true. GST has made the tax system more efficient, as what Bruce said. It has also broadened the tax base. And this year, the government expects to collect net 20 billion ringgit in GST collection. This is after discounting for the offsets and exemptions under GST. But this year's collection is only for 2/3 of the year. So if we extrapolate it for the whole year, we can expect the government to collect 30 billion ringgit in GST next year. And this will be a very good buffer for any shortfall, any deficit in the payments by Petronas to the government coffers. I mean, Petronas pays dividends, it pays royalties, it pays development taxes, it pays export duties, import duties. And that has been quite a sizable sum in years past. Like, for example, in last year, 2014, Petronas paid some 70 billion. Although we expect that this year and next year, the picture will not be so rosy for Petronas, because the first quarter 2015 results of Petronas is that they have suffered a 39% loss in earnings. So Petronas will be hard-pressed to pay similar amounts to the government. So I would expect there will be at least a 20 billion ringgit shortfall in Petronas' payment to the government. And this is where GST comes in to offer us that compensation for this possible loss in revenue from oil.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, let's talk about two things, which is the self-imposed deficit reduction to maybe 3.1 and even lower as we move forward. Can we maybe relax that, looking at how things are right now, and maybe increase spending for development? That's number one. Number two, which is the statement that Ministry of Finance officer, senior Ministry of Finance officer, yesterday said that there will be something for everybody in the 2016 budget, especially the lower and middle income group, and also that the government will not cut on major or will not abandon projects that will improve the livelihood of the people. So how do we look at it for Budget 2016? Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Kita kembali berehat sekali ke bahas.
Harapan bajet untuk 2016 adalah kami berharap terutama daripada golongan belia lebih stabil ekonomi lah, terutamanya di kawasan luar bandar. Tidak juga lupa kepada kawasan dalam bandar, kerana pada masa sekarang ni ekonomi adalah asas utama bagi untuk negara, sesebuah negara itu maju. Jadi berharap bajet 2016 ni akan membela lebih banyak nasib rakyat bukan saja untuk golongan muda, juga kepada golongan yang berkeluarga dan juga kepada orang-orang yang berada di sekitar kampung ataupun tempat-tempat yang boleh dimajukan.
Dan bertemu kembali, kita bersama dengan Bruce Hamilton dan Datuk Dr. John Antony Xavier membincangkan berkenaan dengan keadaan ekonomi semasa dan juga berkenaan dengan bajet 2016 serta cabaran untuk merangka bajet 2016 ketika keadaan ekonomi global dan juga keadaan ekonomi yang sedikit menyederhana. Dan seterusnya, kembali kepada perbincangan dalam bahasa Inggeris. Datuk, we'll go to you first. The self-imposed 3.1% deficit, maybe can we look into relaxing that restriction and maybe look into spending more this year for development so that we can have a stronger base as we move forward into 2016?
True. The government is on track in reducing the budget deficit to eventually obtain a balanced budget in 2020. And I think one of the preoccupations of the government is that it has to ensure that investor confidence in our economy is restored, because investor confidence is a matter of perception. Our fundamentals are good. So that is why the government recently allocated 20 billion ringgit to value cap to buy undervalued stocks in the stock market to help give the stock market a boost and thereby to retain investor confidence in our economy. So one way of retaining our investor confidence in our economy is to ensure that our credit rating still remains at A stable. So which can be compromised if the government goes lax on our budget deficit. This year, the budget deficit was reduced to, or rather was slightly expanded to 3.2%. And I think that the government would have the budgetary discipline to ensure that it does not go any bigger. If not, even better, to shrink the budget deficit further, because that will then give confidence to investors and to our credit rating agencies to say, hey, the government is serious about its fiscal deficit, it is serious about fiscal sustainability. And yes, I think the government will be serious, although it has got many challenges in catering for many a wish list that has come to the Prime Minister. But I'm sure that the Prime Minister would have this budget target in place.
So no chance at all to maybe relax a bit with the deficit?
I don't think the government will want to relax, because then that will give the impression that the government is not serious about fiscal discipline. So if at all the government will still maintain its target of 3.2, even better if it shrinks it further. And this is where, as you said, this is the juggling act that the government will have to do, the balancing act to do, so that it does not breach its broad budget deficit target, at the same time seeks to fund its priorities.
Bruce, well, should the government maybe relax a bit, offer more stimulus to stimulate the economy, or should the government stay on track with the deficit, with the spending, and being really prudent with planning moving forward?
I think we've got to think outside the box with this one. I don't think it's necessary to relax the deficit level at this stage. I think what the government should be doing is focusing in on reducing red tape, allowing business to do what business does best, and that's make money, allowing it to generate the internal income for the country, which itself will generate further tax revenues. I think if the government adopted a policy of really doing a significant amount of reduction of red tape, that really business spends an awful lot of time on filling in forms, dealing with red tape, which could be far more productively used in terms of their time spent. I think if the government does that, then straight away we've got a sort of a better outcome. In terms of the deficit, I think one's always got to remember that if we're borrowing money now, we're going to have to pay it back at some point in time. Now, that's not necessarily us, it's our children. Do we want to put our children into debt? Preferably not. We want to try and reduce that. So if we can work other ways to make it easier for the government to proceed with its revenue targets, proceed with its expenditure targets. I think that's going to should be a far better way of doing it.
Yeah. And that's true, because if, with fiscal discipline, and as Bruce says, if the government can create an ecosystem that causes companies to prosper better with the reduction of red tape, then of course they will be able to pay more taxes. And also the fiscal discipline also imposes a budgetary discipline in terms of budgetary expenditure. We can see from the annual Auditor General's reports that year in and year out there's massive waste in public expenditure. So with the fiscal discipline in place, it is timely that the government will be a bit more serious, as it has always been, to ensure that the expenditures are incurred prudently, efficiently, according to rules and regulations. There's greater transparency and accountability. And I think that savings will help the government to finance and fund other priorities that might have been otherwise compromised as a result of this fiscal deficit target of 3.2.
Okay, let's go back to Bruce. Bruce, I want to ask you the top 3 red tapes that you want to see maybe reduce, or maybe we can make without as we move forward, so that we can stimulate businesses and encourage businesses right now.
Okay, one thing, obviously, we've had the GST come in over the last 8 months now, 9 months. That has been an important process. Now, and I've seen this in other countries, with introduction of GST, there's always a bit of a gap between the theory of what you're wanting to achieve and the actual practicalities of it. And I think what we are certainly practicing in GST at this stage are seeing that there's quite a lot of little bits where the theory is great, the intention is great, but there are roadblocks in the way of business being able to proceed easily and achieve the outcomes that are necessary. And those roadblocks don't necessarily ensure better collection of the revenue. It doesn't necessarily ensure a better administration of the revenue at all. It simply is a roadblock because someone thought that it was a good idea at the time. And now I think we need to start revisiting those. I can see there are enormous numbers of not big things, not big ticket items, but a lot of smoothing of the whole process, which can make life a lot easier and allow free business up to do what it does best. In terms of other things, we've got the anti-profiteering regulations in place. Now, that was always going to be an important factor that we needed to take into account. Every other country that's introduced a GST has had something similar along those lines. I think what certainly with Australia they found that within 6 months, their equivalent were almost no longer necessary any longer. World had moved on, the economy had moved on, pricing had settled down, people understood what the prices were, etc. And I think from a GST perspective, which is why the regulations were introduced, I think it's done its job.
Okay.
I think what we're now finding is a lot of businesses are having to go through the hoops in order to comply with the regulations. But the reasons behind their need for an increase in pricing is because of the ringgit devaluation, not the GST. The GST is now a history process as far as they're concerned.
Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the implementation of GST 7 months in. You know, what can we see so far, and how has that affected the people and spending, and what can we maybe do right now to address those issues. Before that, we go to Iza. Iza ada perkara yang ingin dikongsikan daripada media sosial berkenaan dengan bajet 2016, Iza?
Ya, betul tu Rizal. Dan sepanjang bulan ini telah pun kita aktifkan di platform media sosial kita, dan rata-rata daripada apa yang saya dapat lihat yang rakyat Malaysia semua kongsikan di media sosial, termasuklah di platform-platform media sosial Astro Awani sendiri, rata-rata sebenarnya menunjukkan kebimbangan terhadap peningkatan kos sara hidup. Dan mereka harapkan paling utama sekali bahawa bajet 2016 ni dapat mengurangkan kos sara hidup, apatah lagi dengan kenaikan harga petrol, harga tol, aplikasi GST dan mungkin mereka mencadangkan bahawa sama ada mengurangkan kos hidup untuk memudahkan sedikit kehidupan mereka dan mungkin juga memberi lebih banyak peluang-peluang pekerjaan terutama sekali kepada golongan belia yang baru saja mungkin graduate dan akan masuk ke alam pekerjaan dan juga mereka yang akan cuba memiliki rumah pertama. Dan mungkin saya boleh bacakan sedikit, Rizal, antara tweet yang dikongsikan. Puteri Kandi mengatakan bahawa dia ingin kos hidup dikurangkan, kestabilan harga petrol dan tambah peluang pekerjaan serta peluang perniagaan belia. Saya setuju dengan pendapat ini. Dan Dino Rashid pula mengatakan dia mendoakan bajet 2016 menjadi pemangkin semangat Gen Y di masa akan datang dan taraf hidup yang lebih maju. Positif di situ. Dan Khalid Aini pula mengatakan bahawa rakyat Malaysia berharap agar bajet 2016 yang akan dibentangkan oleh PM akan bantu mengurangkan beban mereka, rakyat secara keseluruhan. Dan Haidis Hazard mengharapkan bahawa bajet 2016 dapat memudahkan golongan belia untuk membeli kereta untuk ke tempat kerja dan juga membeli rumah dan juga mewujudkan gaji minimum lah. Dan ni seorang daripada Sarawak, si Nur Nginang, mengharapkan bahawa bajet 2016 agar lebih banyak peruntukan untuk kemudahan asas kawasan luar bandar, Rizal. Dan jika anda ada pendapat mengenai bajet 2016, boleh tag saja @501awani ataupun Facebook kami 501 Awani ataupun hashtagkan saja bajet 2016 dan kami akan ambil dan bacakan.
Okey, terima kasih Iza Izlan. Kita kembali bersama dengan Bruce dan juga Datuk Dr. John Antony Xavier sebentar saja lagi untuk membincangkan berkenaan dengan pelaksanaan GST dan juga apakah cabaran dalam memastikan bahawa pelaksanaan GST dapat berjalan dengan lancar dan juga rakyat dapat menikmati hasil daripada pelaksanaan tersebut. Kita akan berehat sekali, kembali selepas ini.
I think what needs to be done is to focus more on the oil and gas construction, which is what Rapid is putting a full stream on that, and also what development has been slowed down a little bit in East Malaysia, which is I think the Samur project and the Spitang, the Sogip. I think that should start picking up. I think more emphasis should be put on there. I think the best time to push forward construction in the oil and gas is during this time when oil prices are down, and I think things should be focused on that. Even with the oil prices down, the byproduct of oil and gas is still having good revenue. I think if we focus more on that side, I think things will be good.
Dan bertemu kembali bersama dengan Bruce Hamilton dan Datuk Dr. John Antony Xavier membincangkan berkenaan dengan sekarang adalah GST dan pelaksanaan GST dan kesannya kepada perniagaan dan juga masyarakat dan bagaimana kita ingin memastikan bahawa dengan pelaksanaan GST penggunaan domestik atau permintaan domestik tidak terkesan dan kerajaan dalam masa yang sama dapat memastikan bahawa kutipan hasil yang dilaksanakan ataupun dilakukan dapat memberi sumbangan kepada pelaksanaan bajet dalam masa akan datang. So let's talk about first the implementation of GST. I'll go to Bruce first. Bruce, let's talk about the implementation of GST 7 months in. What do you make of it so far? I heard you say earlier that there are challenges and we need to look at these challenges. And you have also mentioned earlier that Australia took about 6 months to have price stabilization. We're 7 months in and people are not complaining, but people are voicing their dissatisfaction with how GST has affected their lives. So what can we do?
Okay, well, I think one of the problems that we've had to deal with during the process is that on the back of GST, which are totally unrelated, has been the devaluation of the ringgit. That has had an impact on prices probably far greater than GST ever had. But it's sort of there's not that disconnect in the minds of most people. They remember GST coming in, prices have gone up, and they don't make that other connection. So it's really that's a bit of an education issue. But I think, as I said earlier, with the introduction of GST, it proceeded a lot smoother than I thought it would. I mean, it's always a difficult process. Because it's a fundamental change to the economy. I think what has made life more difficult than possibly necessary is the number of exemptions and the number of zero rating. Now, before I get pilloried for saying that, probably the country that had most zero-rated items before Malaysia took the mantle was South Africa. And they have now subsequently move back to reduce the amount of items that are zero rated, which is where there's no GST paid. Because it's really taking a blunt instrument to achieve a very targeted outcome. I think it's far better to have less zero-rated exemptions, that sort of thing, and then provide the support to the people who really need it, rather than, it's not necessary for someone like myself to be able to buy lobster zero-rated. It's not fair. That sort of thing shouldn't be happening. It is necessary for someone who doesn't earn much, has very little income, to be able to access certain outcomes, certain things in society. And if they can't access it, then they need to have support.
So
and the government needs to
the number of zero-rated items, so zero-rated items, and then you increase support to that very targeted group of people.
Very targeted support, so that it isn't just available to the general population who don't necessarily need that support. We make it very targeted support so that it's to the most unfortunate, the least fortunate people, that they get that support in the process.
Has government enforcement in terms of making sure price doesn't rise after the implementation of GST successful so far?
It's been as successful as it ever could be. It's always going to be a difficult thing. The regulations that they put in place were very targeted on looking at the profit margin that a business was making on any particular item, any particular stock keeping unit, for instance. So this particular item would be different from a pen or something like that. So you look at the profitability on that particular item. Now, what the MDTCC, the Ministry for Domestic Trade, have done, they have been tasked with doing that anti-profiteering work. In terms of their imprimatur, their requirements, they have done a good job. But again, the actual premise under which the regulations were formed, I don't think were business friendly in any way, because it requires very specific regulations, very specific information, which a lot of businesses don't keep that sort of information normally. So that's increased the red tape rather than reducing it.
Okay.
And that's made it a lot more difficult for business to function rather than easier to function.
Yeah, Gary's right. It's rather unfortunate that when GST was introduced, our currency was on a decline. Because when our currency depreciates, there's a risk of us importing inflation, because the cost of imports commensurately goes up. And 70% of our imports are all intermediate items that go into the final manufacture. So with continued currency depreciation of the ringgit, our cost of production goes up because we are importing raw materials, and those raw materials now cost that much more given the depreciation. And number two, I think we must realize that GST substitutes, or in a way, partly substitutes the SST that we had in place. So it is not a totally new tax regime. It is in a way, but it sort of says, now we'll focus on GST. We are going to forego all our service taxes. So the impact on prices should not be that much as we see it today. The tremendous impact of prices upon the implementation of GST has been also because of profiteering by opportunistic traders who have taken this opportunity to put a GST. I go and have my roti canai, and the man says the roti canai price has gone up by 10 cents because of GST. I go and park a car in a small parking lot, and when I exit, not only do I pay 4 ringgit as parking fee, but the attendant says I got to pay another 40 cents for GST. And I don't want to argue with them because it is in the midday. So opportunistic traders have taken the opportunity to increase the prices. And number two, traders and businessmen, either out of reluctance or either of ignorance, do not claim back their offsets for the materials that they have used in their final production of their goods and services. So, so they pass on the whole GST, lock, stock and barrel, to the ultimate consumer, and that has aggravated the price increase which is inevitable in the case of GST.
So obviously more needs to be done in order to address those issues. For example, maybe in terms of educating the consumer, educating the traders to make sure that, as you said, cost is not passed to consumer and consumer knows that this is not the rise of prices is not caused by GST, but errant traders making higher profit out of the implementation of GST. We'll go back to that shortly. Let's take another short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about implementation of GST and how do we educate. How can the government maybe further educate consumers and also traders? Because you mentioned quite an interesting thing just now, which is errant traders not collecting their the offsets for GST. Let's talk about that when we come back. Berhenti berehat seketika, kembali selepas ini. Dan bertemu kembali menjelang perbincangan menjelang pengumuman ataupun pembentangan bajet 2016 yang akan dibentangkan oleh Perdana Menteri dan juga Menteri Kewangan pada pukul 4 petang nanti. 3 petang kita ada perbincangan juga sehingga pada pukul 4 petang untuk membincangkan apakah harapan menjelang pembentangan bajet pada pukul 4 petang nanti. Dan bersama saya juga adalah rakan tugas saya Iza Izlan yang akan bercakap berkenaan dengan pelaksanaan GST. Iza, apa yang diperkatakan berkenaan dengan pelaksanaan GST?
Okey, sebenarnya bercakap tentang GST ini paling banyak yang mendapat respon selain daripada BRIM ya Rizal. Dan mungkin boleh saya bacakan secara keseluruhannya lah, saya tak akan baca satu persatu. Rata-rata ingin bahawa hak mereka dilindungi sebagai pengguna ya Rizal, kerana ada yang mengatakan bahawa sejak GST diimplementasi pada 1 April yang lalu, banyak kedai-kedai atau peniaga-peniaga yang mengambil kesempatan untuk menaikkan harga barang dengan sewenang-wenangnya tanpa mengikut guideline ataupun peraturan yang diberikan oleh GST itu sendiri. Dan bercakap tentang tadi seperti yang Rizal bincangkan dengan Bruce dan juga Dr. John mengenai dengan GST dan bagaimana kita boleh memberikan pendidikan kepada pengguna ya Rizal. Di sini mereka juga mengatakan bahawa ada yang masih tak tahu lagi bagaimana nak bezakan GST, bagaimana nak bezakan sales tax dan sebagainya. Dan di sini menurut daripada website yang saya lihat ni adalah sebenarnya ada Akta Kawalan Harga dan juga Anti Pencatutan 2011 iaitu penerbitan panduan harga pengguna ya Rizal. Dan ia mengajar pengguna untuk membandingkan harga sebelum dan selepas pelaksanaan GST dan mungkin kita akan laporkan semua ini dalam astronomy.com. Dan jika anda ada pandangan mengenai dengan GST atau apa sahaja yang berkaitan dengan bajet 2016, boleh hashtagkan saja ke #bajet 2016 ataupun tag @501awani Rizal. Ya,
kami mengumpulkan cadangan dan juga pandangan anda untuk dibacakan pada pukul 3 ke 4 petang nanti tentang harapan anda sebelum pembentangan bajet 2016 yang akan diumumkan oleh Perdana Menteri pada pukul 4 petang nanti ya. Seterusnya kita kembali kepada perbincangan bersama dengan Bruce dan juga Dr. Xavier dalam bahasa Inggeris. Let's talk about the thing that we mentioned or we discussed briefly during the short break. We can go to Bruce first, maybe. Bruce, you mentioned that you're not fully agree with what Dr. Xavier mentioned just now.
Yeah, look, in terms of the profiteering element of the process, I think while there are going to be people who profiteer out of GST, I think there's a lot of an education process, but I think there are some built-in issues in the GST Act and the legislation which actually prevent some operators from getting their input tax credits back. One particularly big one that I'm well aware of is with property and construction developers. If they are developing a commercial property, they typically will do it in a new business, in a new company. And that's for risk management reasons, all that sort of thing, which is not really important. But from their perspective, customs are saying to them, look, until you can show us that you're going to be earning income, you can't claim your input tax credits back. Now, some of these bigger property developments, that could be 2 years down the track. And it means that they are building up a cash flow consequence. They're not getting their input tax credits back, and that's going to end up costing a lot more at the end of the day when the development is sold.
And this cost will be passed on to consumers, right?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's going to be passed through the value chain, and consumers will pick up the tab. Now, I think that is a short-sighted process because development, if the whole concept of GST is if you're using goods and services to enable you to make taxable supplies, then you should be entitled to claim the the credits back. And what's happening is they're being denied that. So what happens is that those input tax credits then get built into the cost, and that gets passed on. So that is a major issue. In terms of the profiteering element, certainly we in Deloitte have worked quite a lot with the Ministry of Domestic Trade, and we're not seeing that much of the true profiteering. There is at a lower level, smaller level, but certainly in terms of the bigger companies, the bigger businesses, they're very aware that they don't want to have their name up in lights as having been taken to court for profiteering. That's you'll probably find that their brand to them is far more valuable than an extra couple of cents profit on a particular transaction. So we're not seeing that happening so much. They are now really starting to find that they're having to look at price increases, not because of the GST, but because of the depreciation in the ringgit, importing extra costs, they're buying things in US dollars, etc.
Okay. Doctor, let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll talk about your response to that. And also, I want to ask the tools that we have in hand right now, which is the GST and also the income tax. How do we maybe balance and look at using those tools to make sure that people still have a lot to spend, and also at the same time, government can collect revenues? Let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll go to you, Doctor. Okay, thank you. Dan bertemu kembali dalam perbincangan menjelang bajet 2016. Kita terus bersama dengan Dr. Xavier berkenaan dengan GST. Doctor?
Yeah, we were talking about GST and its impact on prices. Yes, GST invariably will have a one-off impact on the price level of the goods and services in the economy. But this is only one-off. And the World Bank has done a study that over the long term, the price increase under GST will be that much lower than otherwise without GST. So the inflation rate will be higher without GST over the long haul compared to the inflation rate as a result of GST. The prices will still increase, but they are a lot more lower than otherwise without the GST. So we can expect, as Bruce said, in the long haul, 6 months down the road,
price stabilization.
Prices will stabilize simply because some 30 billion ringgit will be moved out of the economy into the government coffers. People will have that much lesser money to spend, and so the impact upon inflation will be that much lower.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about people have lesser money to spend. When the Prime Minister announced GST in 2014 to be implemented in 2015, the government has actually reduced income tax, and now people or individual earning 4,000 ringgit a month will no longer have to pay personal income tax. But can we also look at maybe adjusting that and reducing personal income tax as we move forward, if we know that GST will contribute to a huge portion of the government's revenue? Can we do that?
Yes. I think the experience worldwide of countries, some 160 countries implementing GST, is that in parallel with the implementation of GST, the government also eases the burden of the public by commensurately reducing the corporate income tax rate and also the income tax rate. And the government has done a good start since last budget announcement, whereby the maximum marginal personal income tax rate will be reduced from 25 to 24 to 24%. And likewise, the corporate income tax rate will also be reduced to 24%. But if we look at Singapore, when Singapore first introduced its GST way back in 1964, it came with a whole portfolio of tax offsets, a reduction in both corporate and personal income tax. So much so now, the corporate income tax is now capped at 17%. Marginal income tax rate for individuals is now capped at 22%. So that makes Singapore, in terms of its tax regime, a lot more competitive than Malaysia. Our tax rates are still higher compared to that in Singapore. And I think there's still a room and margin for the government to further make reductions in income tax structure, of course, without compromising the revenue generation of GST. I mean, we don't want to collect GST on one side and then give it in terms of tax rebates and tax relief on the other. I mean, there must be some net balance going to the government. But it augurs well to help ease the burden of the GST on both the middle income people as well as the lower income people. As you said, people with 4,000 below income, family income, don't have to pay income tax. Yeah.
Bruce, should the government or will the government announce the further reduction of income tax maybe in this budget? Do you foresee that a corporate tax or income tax, personal income tax?
I think there is a program at the moment where they are progressively reducing it slightly. I mean, I don't think that's going to change in any significant way that I'm aware of. To answer your other question about will there be any change in the GST, I would hope not at this stage. I think it's going to cause too much confusion in the market in terms of business. They've set their systems to be able to deal with a 6% GST. I think it's only really when you've got a budget emergency, like, for instance, happened in the UK in 2008, that's when you reduce the GST for a temporary period. But you've got to remember then, since then, they've then gone back, they've now increased their value-added tax or GST to a level that was higher than it was originally prior to the budget emergency. So, you know, what you give with one hand, you take away with the other. It does happen that way, that it's not necessarily a good thing to play around too much with the levels unless you absolutely have to.
Okay. And on that score, while we're not talking about reducing GST, we should also be a bit mindful of increasing the GST. Now the people in the street are worried that if the government does not have enough revenue coming from Petronas, will it then go and increase the GST? I think it would not, and it should not, because lately in April this year, Japan increased its GST to 8%.
So and people just stopped spending in Japan.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Let's talk about the social security net that the government has to put forth or increase in order to maybe address the negative comments from people following the implementation of GST, and people are saying that GST has increased prices. So should we maybe address that by providing more social security provisions so that people can spend more and they know that they have something to fall back on?
The last budget, 2015 budget, the government proposed a two-pronged attack on the economy, and it said that the allocations will be for the people economy and for the capital economy. The people economy is to ease the burden of the increased cost of living, and for that the government has proposed increases to BRIM, the One Malaysia People's Aid. For 2015 budget, the government increased the aid level to 950 ringgit payable in 3 installments for household incomes of less than 3,000. I expect the government to be a bit more generous this time around, and perhaps, in fact, this was already indicated by the Prime Minister that he would consider increasing the BRIM payout by 100 or 200 ringgit to ease the burden on the rakyat as a result of increased price level.
Bruce, wish list for 2016. What do you want the government to announce to maybe help lessen the burden of the rakyat and also, at the same time, implement GST properly?
Look, again, it comes back to my earlier comments where I think, yes, it's good to support the people who are the less fortunate people, the people who really need it. But I think that one's got to really look at the definition of who really needs it and who doesn't. The people who don't really need it, I don't think they should be getting any additional support. The people who do need it, yes, fine, go for it. But what a comment you made earlier, Datuk, was the fact that you don't want to increase the GST revenue collection and just spend it again. You want to be able to create something with it. You want to, maybe if you're using it for infrastructure, you're generating new jobs, that sort of thing. That's one way of dealing with that. Building the economy.
Capacity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that has long-term effects, so that the people who are actually paying for the deficit now will actually derive the benefit in future as well.
In the future,
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll go to Iza Izlan. For Iza, mungkin Iza ingin nyatakan kepada penonton di luar sana untuk menghantarkan komen dan juga pandangan kepada Astro Awani, social media Astro Awani untuk mendapatkan ataupun untuk kita bacakan nanti pada pukul 3 ke 4 petang nanti.
Ya, dan kita ada social media team yang akan sentiasa monitor dan akan sentiasa lihat komen-komen anda dan juga pendapat-pendapat anda. Sama ada di Facebook ataupun di Twitter ataupun di Instagram, boleh saja follow kami di facebook.com/501awani ataupun Twitter kami @501awani dan Instagram pun sama @501awani. Dan jika anda ada pandangan, cadangan, idea atau apa sahaja berkaitan dengan bajet untuk tahun ini, untuk hari ini, hashtagkan saja #bajet 2016 dan insyaAllah kami akan lihat komen anda dan juga pandangan anda. Rizal.
Okey, terima kasih Iza Izlan dan thank you very much Bruce Hamilton, GST Director from Deloitte Malaysia, and also Dr. John Antony Xavier, Professor of Management, Graduate School of Business, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, for being with us today, and we look forward to more maybe budget insights following ataupun after the budget will be tabled this afternoon. So we'll keep in touch and see your comments after the budget tabling this afternoon. Dan itu saja daripada saya, Rizal Zulkafli, dan teruskan bersama kami pada pukul 3 petang sehingga 7 petang ini untuk bincangan bajet 2016, diskusi pre dan juga ataupun pra dan juga pasca bajet 2016.